guess
Sorry.
now that we got the recording part, now that we got the recording part underway, we got some guests because I see some names I don't recognize. So I'm going to open the floor briefly, real quick, to any comments that or questions for items not on the agenda, but the agenda has got one item. We had to discuss ways to bring our current project into budget so that we can get this thing going and get it done without having to request more capital. So if there's anybody out there that has questions not pertaining to that or comments, let us know. I'm going to open the floor briefly for that.
Bruce,
Yes, Walt.
can I request that that people who want to speak, that they identify themselves and their association before they, so we don't know who's who.
Correct. That would be good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good point, Walt. Is there anybody that wants to make a quick comment before we get started? I'm not seeing any flags, so. Okay. So we are here with a renovation project that's been in the works now for going on 6 years. We have a general contractor picked out. We have equipment sitting in storage, waiting to go. The engineer has done their job and their part. So long and behold, with the craziness of the world over the last year, our budget got into trouble. So we're looking for ways that we can bring that project back into line so that we can get this done. Have you got any thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, so I've been back and forth with Casey a little bit and with you some ways that we can try to reduce costs. Blaine Casey's included some in their proposal, and that is swapping out a cast in place retaining wall for a segmented retaining wall. That's just the one on the right hand side as you're driving up towards the new building. And I talked to him earlier this week or late last week about removing the doors, at least for now, not installing the doors. There's 4 really good size overhead doors that are fairly expensive, including their operators and power to them. I mean, aside from that, we're bare bones unless you want to get into removing the building and reconfiguring the slab so that we only collect what's under the cans and try to eliminate as much leachate as we can, going to a relatively small holding tank, which is really what got us here in the first place. I mean, that was my first site visit, as the yard was flooded with leachate because it rained and the tank flooded, and not a great design. That the catch basins were obviously installed after the fact, and not under the can like they are on the residential side. Seems like that one works pretty well, and you don't have the leachate problem there. So we could do that on the commercial side too. Although I think commercially, because of the restaurants, you tend to generate more leachate anyway. So that's where we are. We could build it right back where it is and utilize the existing retaining wall. That causes logistical problems with staying open and trying to replace the compactors in place, because we'd still have to replace the slab, rip up the existing drainage and put in new drainage underneath the slab, and probably move the holding tank. So, aside from the cost, there's also some logistical on why we chose where to put it, so that we could be built and maintain operation. Otherwise, you're building a temporary facility offsite somewhere or collecting it somewhere else.
One question I had, Chris, is Blaine had a contingency for winter work, and obviously this now is not going to start for at least another month or so. We're going to be out of the cold weather.
Yep.
Any thoughts on what that cost may be that we can back out of that price? Maybe Blaine can answer that.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I asked him to look into was, we have the retaining wall number. Look at the doors. That one's a relatively easy look, and then the winter conditions piece of it. Those are kind of the 3 things that we talked about on the phone last week.
Okay. Do we know what that number is?
Winter condition number is what? 10, right?
Yeah, about $10,000.
So with that all said, Chris, do we have any numbers that we can take a look at right now to pick a direction?
So the ones that I know are that one now, winter conditions, 10,000, retaining wall was around 15,000. So a total of 25. And I don't know if you folks had a chance to look at the doors or not yet to see what that reduction
Yeah,
would be.
the doors were about 40,000 deduction.
About 10,000 a door.
So that's 65,000 by my math reduction.
Just where we were, 129.
Yeah, it was, yep. And
Well, 15's a round number, so it's a little less than 15. So it was 14 something, 14.8.
So I got a question for you folks, I guess, is what's our target? And for the construction budget? And does that include any contingency that was in your budget?
Right now, our budget is maxed out. We don't have a contingency. In fact, we got a shortfall from the original estimate you just gave us a month or two ago. So that's why we're trying to bring this back into line.
Okay.
No, I think Bruce, what they want to know is what is your budget? And then I think it's a good idea to carry some contingency because, you know, this is a transfer station site. What are you going to find when you start digging in the ground? So we probably want some contingency, you know, from your budget working backwards for them to hit.
Yep. Maybe Walt can answer that better than the most of us here as our secretary treasurer. So, or that as Zell, or both for that matter. Walt, do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I have to run down and get a spreadsheet. I'll be back.
Well, I'll skip to Zell. What's your thoughts on that? You're muted, Zell.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just pulling up the spreadsheet. Sorry. You know, so I guess one question for Chris is how much of a contingency do you think we should have for this project?
Probably around 10%.
Yeah, it's kind of what we had met with the three towns a couple weeks ago, and you know, assuming a 10% contingency. Just pulling it up. That was sort of what we thought would be appropriate to carry.
I know when I was at the transfer facility today, going over the warrants and stuff, and I was looking over some of those, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now. They're upstairs. But I believe the latest on the sheet was we had $1,068,000 in our capital improvement line. The contingency line was 158,000, I believe it was, for a total of $1,226,000 available to us. If those numbers are accurate, that's what we have to work with at this point to make this project work.
Yeah, I was just gonna share. This is can everyone see this slide? Yeah.
Yes.
So this was the slides that we looked at back on the 11th, just so we have that in front of us. So essentially, you know, this was sort of our tally of it, what the Blaine Casey bid is. We're adding in the cost of the compactors and the scale, and we took the approximate engineering fees for construction administration based on our contract, and this is where we had the total cost being. And so essentially, we had a difference of 213,000. That was assuming a 10% contingency of 129. So in terms of, and Walter will probably be able to speak to this better than I can, but in terms of the cost, the construction cost, it's right around 50,000 that we really need to get out. And then additional, once you take into consideration what our contingency should be for the project.
Yeah, I would think so. 100,000 contingency, just a round number, would probably
Okay.
be fine.
I don't see anything on the building itself typically the contingency is gonna come into play with soils or, you know, unforeseen conditions, but it's pretty much a brand new facility, so as long as the soils are good, we should be good from there up.
Yeah, the one thing we don't know when we get into transfer stations is sometimes there were landfill sites. I'm not sure this one was, but it's happened before. When you start digging, you start running into old waste material, tires and roots and stumps. And so, you know, that's why we asked for that unit cost in the bid. So I doubt there's gonna be ledge. I can't imagine there's ledge here, but there is I think a quarry though nearby on the other side of Route 1.
Yeah, it's lime rock.
But even, we're pretty much building up anyway, so I don't see ledge as being an issue. So the only contingency would be is running into unsuitable material when we dig for the footing. So maybe 100,000 is too much. Maybe we could back that back to even 35 to 50.
Some of the past history of that, those were two residential lots originally. God knows what they had in those lots. They were residential homes. I know the one at our curbside now for the residents was a condemned home that was taken over by the town of Thomaston. And there was a lot of trash and stuff around that facility. I believe it's all surface. I don't believe it was buried. You know, of course, these houses date back to the old days where everybody didn't have a dump and they just dumped out in the woods. And we're trying to keep from going back to that by having a facility to work with.
Right.
As far as the ground behind, basically where you're working, we back in 2008 when we were working on this curbside residential area, we had what we called the big dig, is what we dubbed it as. The DEP came in and made some mandated changes. The scrap iron pile used to be out there. If you're familiar with Scott keeps the spare cans and stuff right now, all that was excavated out and taken out because there was oils in the soil from, you know, the compressor units of refrigerators and stuff like that, bits and pieces of plastic, metals, all ground up and mixed in with the soils, and the DEP made us remove that. So that's all been put it back into original soil, good soil back in. So you shouldn't find no contaminants over there.
Okay.
So that's all should be good. If I don't know if that helps you or not, but
It does, and so what I'm hearing is I think we can reduce the contingency. I think if we're comfortable with the subgrade that's there, then we can reduce that. Maybe it's 5%, so maybe it's around 50 grand.
Yeah, I would 5% I think would be, you know, I don't know that I'd go any lower than that just for a cushion. You can always put it back in, right? But if you pull out the doors, I'll pay for the doors. If we don't use any of the contingency or a small portion, that could go back in there. I think we have reached out to our metal building supplier again. Steel prices have kind of leveled off. We're waiting on them to get back to us, so that we'll take another look at that avenue. If that's not objectable from you folks, it sounds like you just want a building. Another opportunity I thought would be is get your structure up and get a roof on it so that you can have your control building inside, get your electrical items in there. Because if you don't have a building, you still got to have the electricity for the compactors, lighting, things of that nature. So if you don't put that there, you're going to end up providing waterproof enclosures, and that would definitely add cost, and obviously you don't want to do that. So if you left the building, we'll get the structure up, roof on, no siding, but you could have your railings. It's always something that can be added either out of the contingency towards the end or later down the road.
that was one of the suggestions in our 3-town meeting on the other night is to get this in the budget, how much of this, they didn't want to really scrap the entire plan. They want to keep the plan that we had, but how much of this could be done in stages to keep this cost affordable and we could work it in later down the road. is one of the suggestions. And I think that's probably one option we're looking at.
Okay,
I mean, there are probably other roofing and siding options. We called out metal. I don't know where shingles fall in cost-wise to metal roof now, or even a vinyl siding instead of metal. I mean,
Paul,
we're pinching dollars here. I mean, we're talking smaller numbers when we start talking these items.
Right.
You know, doors is a pretty big item. You know, not framing in portions of the walls and siding it is a pretty big item. You know, not building the building at all is even a bigger item, but that, as Casey said, that's, you know, that introduces other costs when you start having to do weatherproofs and closures for electrical and that sort of thing. And maybe covers for the cans to keep leachate out of the hoppers. So you're taking away cost to add cost and maybe not get exactly what you want.
Paul, you want to make a comment or a question?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
First comment would be to Chris. First of all, I haven't dealt with you fellas before. I'm the newest member of the board, appointed from Owl's Head.
Mhm.
And first comment is I think that now Chris Snow is here. Am I correct? You're our engineer?
I'm Chris.
Oh,
Snowdale, the
okay,
engineer,
Chris, there you are.
correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought I had another name in front of you. Chris, the first thing is you alluded to something about, well, if you can't rebuild the existing one or something because you got to be in operation. So I looked at the numbers, and I also one of the other people, Scott Johnson, pointed out that we could shut down that unit for, it would be the differential between, and it really came home today when I went and signed the warrants, that the differential between our commercial disposal people coming to the transfer station versus going 2 blocks away, the differential, the added cost runs somewhere about $5,000 a month. It's not a huge number to have that place go down for 60, 120 days. So I thought I heard you say before that you could correct me if I'm wrong, that a consideration could be rebuilding what we have. But the problem was that we had to have continual operation, and it really is not an issue. It's a minor issue when you look at what we're paying now for tipping and hauling versus paying for that same service up the street at the Rockland site. So if you were to put that into your equation, how would you look at this differently? And also, I think I thought the supplier was going to come on tonight, the fellow who has been doing this his whole lifetime. Is that correct? Is someone on board? That's the
He's here, Todd Hager.
Yep. Todd's here.
oh, okay. Well, maybe he can jump in and talk about that too. But could you address that, Chris? If we don't have an issue to have to keep it going, or even if I've been a contractor for, I guess, 45 years, and I'm also a design engineer. It would seem to me when I looked at projects that I was involved in, one is, if just like building a highway, if we had to continue operations, the cost was quite a bit more. So whether this was rebuilt or a new one without having to deal with this would allow much more freedom to reconsider what we're doing. How would you look at that?
Yeah, so if you want to rebuild in the exact same place, the sequence would be remove the existing compactors, remove the existing slab and drainage that's there. Would probably reevaluate the condition of the existing retaining wall. I think most of it's okay. There's sections of it that may be a little worn, but for the most part, the retaining wall there is not bad. Rebuild the drainage, rebuild the pad. You probably would be able to fit a building there. There's just not enough room to be able to get containers in and out. But if you're really looking to do a considerably cheaper project, that is an option. Now, I don't think the scales would fit. The scale would not fit where we show it.
Right,
likely
it would open up. Yeah, you'd open up the whole property though, right?
But yes, the backside then maybe open up for the scale if that's a route you want to go. And then from our standpoint, I mean, that'd be some redesign effort and then re-permitting with DEP because they've already accepted this option, which takes time. DEP permitting takes a bit of time, as we've learned through this process. Any of the permitting does. But it is an option. Mr. Rosen's, that's your name?
Paul, right?
Paul, yep. I mean, that certainly is an option. What the cost would be, I don't know off the top of my head. It would be, I would think, considerably cheaper than $1 million.
Yeah, yeah. I did I guess, did Bruce or Zell, did you share that analysis I did when I visited the 4 closest transfer stations? Noblesboro, Waldoboro, St. George, and Rockport, and had extensive conversations with the managers there. Did you share that with these fellows?
Bruce shared a little bit with me, and you sent me a picture of one of them. I don't remember which one it was.
Oh, well, I only sent a picture of one. It was the only one that even had a building, right? There was a nice operation in Waldoboro, and the reason they built that building was because not only did the commercial haulers use that same dump area, unloading area, but the residents did. And the consideration and the reason they built it was because of the residents being there. The other 3 places had separate areas and no roof or building over where the commercial haulers are. St. George actually put some hydraulic doors over their chutes, which keeps and while I was there, a truck pulled up, they pushed a button, the door opened, the hydraulic door opened, the truck unloaded, and boom, it went back down. And so my quick and dirty is you'd have trouble spending, the compactors have already been purchased. I think the only thing left to purchase is the installation and the
hoppers.
The hoppers.
And whatever door system you use.
And whatever door system, yeah. And a new building can be prefab. There's a place down in Warren could do that. If I did a quick and dirty, I don't think I could spend $300,000 to put that back into brand new condition, wiring, walls, drainage, building. You fellas can jump in. Blaine Construction, maybe you guys have a comment. Maybe today it's 400,000. So basically, the whole site could be improved. I don't think that this bid even included paving. So there was a lot of stuff that was left off. But if you're looking at a complete project, that would I just throw that out as something that we should consider, considering the overall budgetary issue and talking about building a building without walls and adding them later when the cost goes up more. It'd be like we'll never catch up. So I throw that out, and maybe, what was it, Todd? Todd's the thing. Maybe he can jump in, and the rest of our board can jump in with some thoughts. But it is no problem. It's a minor expense when you're looking at $1.5 million project to spend $25,000 or $30,000 to cover our commercial haulers driving 2 blocks further down the road.
I'm gonna stop you there, Paul, because I've got to jump in on this one. Being the new kid on the block, you're not totally familiar with the history of this place, and certainly don't know the nuts and bolts of this operation. This past weekend was the second week in a row that the residential side became full. And the can didn't get pulled. So if that should happen while we have that section tore apart, we have nowhere to go with the residential trash, because there's our backup is the hill, and that's where they went. That's one issue. 2, if those compactors break down, We've got to wait for Mr. Hagar to come down and fix them. And he's been very good at coming down and fixing stuff and very quick. But given the business situation these days and getting parts and delivery, if Lord forbid they should go down a week or more, then we've got no way to handle any trash, none. It's a very dangerous situation shutting that facility down and not having it up and operating. Second of all, the sole reason this facility is where it is and why it's there is there's some bad blood between us and Rockland. And you're going in an assumption that Rockland will take this trash and they will do it for a certain price. You're basing that assumption on what they're currently charging haulers right now. If they all of a sudden decide that this puts a strain on their infrastructure up there for 2-3 months, they may decide to up their tonnage. So you're all speculation on your prices, and I question your prices extremely. I don't think they're valid. I don't think they're warranted.
Let me jump in. You interrupt.
I got the floor.
But
and
you
I'll when
interrupted
I'm ready.
before I was done.
Paul, we're going to do this in an
interrupted.
orderly fashion. Now,
Okay, well, let me talk when you're done.
yes, that's fine. Now, with that said, you're going through all this schmeal and shutting things down and costing money and essentially telling the taxpayers that the thousands of dollars we just spent in 6 years in the works, we're going to throw it out the window and start all over again to save a stupid retainer wall. Because when it's all said and done, that's all you're saving is that retainer wall. We're going to bust up that concrete. We're going to pour new concrete for a pad. We're going to change the drainage. We're going to put a new building in, and we'll put new hoppers. The only thing left is that stupid retainer wall. And then not to mention, to fix that wall, you're going to have to excavate all that soil on the backside of that wall back out so that you can get to that wall to properly repair that. That's a lot of time and expense just to keep an old rundown, busted up facility when we can have a better, safer, newer one set further back. Now, if you want to comment on that, so be it.
Yeah, I'd be glad to comment. New boy or not, I've been involved in business like this as both a contractor and a design engineer.
Oh, you're still a freshman here.
You're interrupting me again. I have
Well,
the
you
floor.
did.
I have the floor. That's it. Point of order. I have the floor.
You have the floor, so start moving with it.
So, so I've been a contractor and an engineer for 45 years. I heard Chris say that it could be done. I hear your excuses to plow ahead with a project that isn't maybe necessary, and I'm asking to talk about it, and you jump in and give all the reasons. Bad blood, have you gone up and talked to him? Have you asked? There was also the issue of the hoppers are not included. That's another $65,000 if you build a new one. I think that Chris may have thought under the old one. Chris, have you checked further? Maybe the compactor guy, so that the numbers keep rolling up. And I think that if Chris doesn't want to give an opinion, maybe the fellows from Blaine, they know what it would cost. They've looked at that project. I've been doing this too long to have you tell me, because I'm the new guy on the block, I don't know what's going on. I'm operating on behalf of the taxpayers of Owl's Head, and in this case, 2 other towns as well. And this is a project that I understand it. There was no ill intention in designing it and going forward with it. The cost that has been spent on it so far is less than 5% of the overall cost, and that's for the engineering. And what I'm asking for, rather than have you step in and put a stop on it, is let's have a discussion about an alternative. And your idea of, well, if the trash chute, if the compactor gets full, well, we have 2 other containers that can sit on the property, and the fellow who hauls and owns those containers is 4 blocks away. So if that gets full, it'll take about an hour to bring the new one in and out. And I suspect that Mr. Johnson would be on standby anytime it looks like that would be an issue. So you've raised objections that are not a real problem. We're just having a discussion here to re-examine what to do. And the idea of building a building with only the roof for the siding, I mean, I've seen projects like this and it doesn't turn out well. And Chris, I'll turn the floor back to you. And also the fellows from Blaine, because I'm sure you could do the rebuild. What do you think?
Before you do that, I'm the chair here, so I'll direct the meeting where it goes. And I was gonna call us Gordon Connell to have some input on this because he too has been here a long time and I'm sure he has some input to put into it. Would you like to comment on it, Gordon?
Sure. I think that one of the points that is being missed here is that berm really needs to be moved over away from the road a little bit further. That's something that rebuilding that in its current position is not going to accomplish. And we have been working on this for a long time. We've given a lot of thought to all the possibilities. And that's why we've arrived at where we are. What we feel needs to be done and the reasons behind it. We didn't just dream this up. We've been working on it for a long time. And unfortunately for us, things changed and a fully funded project has become out of our reach at the moment. And that's why we're going through this. But I think we all firmly stand behind why that improvement up there needs to be the way it is, the way we've thought it out with Chris's help. And
Okay.
we didn't do it lightly.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. That's and I think that we were at a point at a previous meeting where two things. One is let's look at the idea of going with the plan, but no building. You know, as you know, part of visiting the other 4 places other than Waldoboro, which only had a roof over that building because it also serviced the regular citizens to use it. And we don't have one over our citizen part, resident part. So look at that, your whole plan with no building on it, as our 3 local transfer stations all operate in that same situation. Especially the ideal one to look at is St. George or Waldoboro. Not Waldoboro or Nobleboro. I would assume you guys have been to all of those over the years. But what about that? What about you go with the same footprint? Or you even consider, because you can be down, being down is not an issue. And to say that bad blood in Rockland, well, all we got to do is ask them. Life is a 2-way street. They might go down sometime and they could come to our place if they had an issue for a day or 2 or 3. So
I gotta give the floor to somebody else, Paul, because you're repeating yourself on this.
Yeah.
And I gotta give him a chance. Zell,
Sure,
So that's
Walter
good.
has his hand up digitally.
well, you want me to get to Walter first or you? Because I intend to get to Walter.
Oh, well, no, I was just, you can let Walter speak. He's had his hand up for a while, so just wanted to point it out.
Where did Walter go? I don't even see him.
Um,
There he is, way up here. Okay, Walt.
all right. So what's wrong with everything but the building, and see what that's going to cost? And my favorite number is $1,087,333, all in. That's the question was asked about the budget. Did somebody answer that while I was looking for my budget?
I pulled up the slides that we looked at the other night, Walter, but yeah, I think it would be great if you could speak to the budget.
Okay, so the quick history lesson is from 2018 until last year, certainly 4 or 5 times a year, I got up in front of South Thomaston and said, there's a 1 million to 1.2 million train coming down the tracks at you. And that was based on the estimates that Chris gave us at that 3-town meeting so long ago that I don't even remember when it was. Then we got a construction bid of 907,000 from Wood. And as I mentioned last night, we were slapping five because we had raised 400,000 in a loan and 656,000 from the perk buyout. So we're in good shape. Now, what's left of that is, as I say, 1,087,000, 335, 1,087,335. And we spent $103,000 on the compactors. And then we spent $65,000 on the scale, but the fact is that we didn't purchase the scale technically out of the project funds. We really, in effect, purchased it from our own existing either capital improvement or contingency. So for the construction guys, we didn't budget. We didn't sit down and do a budget for the project. We went and funded the project to the max with the minimal impact on the taxpayers. And we exhausted our borrowing authority in doing that. So like I said, we were gratified when we got a $907,000 construction bid less than a year ago. And now we're unhappy that we have $1,200,250 or whatever your latest price is. So to me, it's how do I get to 1,087,000 first of all, and what compromises do we make to get there?
Is that it, Walt?
Yeah.
Before I go to the engineers and stuff, I think I'm going to try to get Zell to get an opinion here.
I'll say that certainly it'd be great to get it down to that number. I think the suggestions kind of totaled 65,000 that we talked about, including taking off the doors, the retaining walls, taking out winter work, and then we talked about reducing our contingency about 50,000. That's the kind of based on what we talked about. Those are things that have come up. I think, going back to some of Paul's points about, taking off the building, do we look at keeping the facility open? Knowing how tight the site is, I feel like keeping the facility open and moving the new structure to the new location, as Chris has proposed since sort of initial design. I think that seems very practical to me. I think about it obviously on this board, but also for the town Thomaston. Thomaston pays 46% of everything at the facility. That's because a lot of Thomaston residents use the facility, and certainly on those Saturday days where there's so much trash, like we really need that other area. And I know, in Thomaston, if people can dump their trash on the Saturday, there would be emails about that. So I think that's really important. And those days are huge capacity over there. I guess, I think, I'd like to approach this work meeting as like, let's talk about options to get the price down. I really appreciate all the work Chris has done and Blaine Casey's done to work on this. So if we could just kind of politely go through some of the options, I think that would be best use of our time here.
Before I go over to Chris or Todd, for the record, I'm not opposed to removing the building. If that's one of the options that we absolutely mandate to do to get this price down, I'm not against that, for the record. But what I am against is scrapping an entire plan and reusing something that we've got now that really truly doesn't fit our needs. It's been mentioned a couple times about hydraulic covers and stuff, and Todd can answer probably give us a rough idea of what that may cost to put the covers on versus a building. So maybe I'll yield the floor to Todd and see if he can give us some input on that.
We can do hydraulic doors. The problem with the hydraulic doors now is you guys have bought 2 compactors that are sitting up there in storage. Not only can we build them, now you're gonna require an extra set of power units to run the doors. They should have kind of been designed from the get-go, and we could have tapped everything into one power unit. So it's gonna increase on your electrical side, it's gonna increase another power unit price. And then we're gonna have to design the roofs with hydraulic roofs. And to be honest, we've done St. George. Those are I did that design up there and we built those. We just did another one, Harpswell, Maine, had hydraulic doors and they didn't like them. They were a pain in the neck to deal with. We redesigned that facility. We put a roof system over the top and they actually put we put steel roll-up doors on them so that you could close them in when they're not being used. I might highly suggest that you guys reach out and talk to Harpswell, go down and see Harpswell. If you guys got the time, just to go take a look and see what we've done there. You may not need it on that magnitude of size, but it's an option that instead of putting the building up, do all your concrete and we build a roof section, which we can do over the top of the hopper systems that I would assume currently you guys are staying with what the original bid required. Is that
As
safe
of
to
right,
say?
as of right now, yes. Yep.
Okay,
So Todd, to be clear, the roof system you're talking about is that part of the hopper or is that a separate unit that sits over the compactor and hopper?
it sits on top of the hopper.
Okay.
You'd have your compactor, we build the hopper, and then we build this third section.
Right. And those doors, thank you, as you explained to me, those can be electric, so you don't need another power head. You just need a power source to.
Right, we just
To the
needed,
opener.
whatever it was, I can't remember what, they had single phase, so we ended up having to install VFDs up there and all that stuff, so anyways, they would be electric operated doors versus anything to do with hydraulics, so now we do away with that extra power unit and additional cost, because that's not a cheap cost.
Yeah. So one downside I can see to this is that you wouldn't be able to see inside the hoppers from the control room anymore. You'd have to actually get out and look inside the can and see the head drive through. Right.
And again, yes, you probably either that or depending on the control room and how things are laid out, we can always put in window type sections into the side of this thing with the, an expanded metal type window so that they are able to see inside it if they needed to.
Okay.
That's easy enough to do. But you got to be careful with what you're doing with the control room because you do have to have that visibility to know what's going on before you guys press buttons. There are some motion and regulations that you got to really pay attention to. You don't want somebody just pressing the button and walking away. You would put safety gates up in front of these overhead doors anyways, so that you could make code.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, a resident's going to use this facility as well as, what is the percentage here of this facility that you guys are trying to do here? Is this just for your commercial haulers or is this going to be a mixture of both?
It's a mix, but this is what we don't really call it a commercial section. It's a bulk haul. I mean, somebody comes in with a pickup load. It's not necessarily a commercial hauler. They just have a pickup load. They got more than 4 or 5 bags that you would normally just go to the curbside drop off. It's real easy. We're talking somebody that's got a dozen or 2 dozen bags. They would be up there using it as well. Somebody coming in with a trailer, like a snowmobile trailer or something that's done some house cleaning, they could be using it as well. We've done our level best pass boards to keep the small traffic, the small cars, compacts and stuff, and the bigger trucks separate. There was a great snafu prior to 2008 before we had that curbside drop off with trucks. Multiple complaints from residents that they were in competition with pickups and dump trucks and whatnot. And there was some near accidents there. So this board and previous boards have done our level best to separate them, to keep them apart as much as possible.
And you definitely want to take away any idea of backing up into these compactors. So this new facility, if I remember right, we're going to be driving through the building. to throw
No,
their
we're backing
trash.
up. We're backing up to it.
No, yeah, we tried, we looked at it, it's just not big enough. The
Can't
site's
drive
not big
through.
enough to do a drive-through, yeah.
Okay.
To get up to that level and then back down, because it is a flat site, so you're basically building your ramp.
Yeah.
Up, to create grade to be able to get your trucks up high enough to dump into the hopper.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what people really want, is the drive-through option. We've designed a couple, and we did one in Bar Harbor, and it worked out pretty nice. Unfortunately, there's just not enough room here.
Yep, and Bar Harbor's there, because we did that one right through up top. Yep.
Yep.
Well, you try to reduce anybody backing up, because there's been some real serious problems with people backing up to compactors. I mean, you could talk to Cape Elizabeth, they had a death down there because of it, so.
Right.
Backing in is a notoriously, backup stuff is notoriously bad on any industry. Construction, truckers, anything. Anytime you have to put something in reverse, there's a risk factor to it. So, safety wise, you always try to avoid that as much as possible. But like Chris said, this is a tight area, limited in space. So there's only one thing we can do.
So you can do, you gotta do it.
So,
Sorry,
Go
Bruce, I don't mind chiming in a little bit. So from our standpoint, I mean, obviously we're working for you folks, so we want to give you what you want and what you need for your budget. As people have mentioned, when this first bid out, we're all excited because Haley Ward wasn't the low bidder. We don't like being the low bidder. We want to be in the middle of the road or even high bidder. So, we were good that it came in low, and it obviously took some time to get through the permitting. And by the time we get it repriced because of COVID, it jumped up 350 grand or so. But that being said, I mean, we obviously want to provide you what you want. That's what we're here for. And, we don't mind designing it again, but that's obviously an additional fee if we have to go through that process. So we just soon work with you on what you have right now, and if it's eliminating the building, then that's fine with us. I think permitting wise, that's a pretty easy fix. There's some considerations there. I don't remember how snow impacts this. You're facing north, so I'm sure a nor'easter snow kind of packs in around those compactors there, and you probably got to clean it out and shovel it out. So I'm certainly a building would help that situation. Plus, just help contain the trash when you're dumping or when the haulers are dumping.
Ask a
Lauren,
question.
yes.
Hi, thank you. Just on that note, I'm just wondering, was there any estimates for what the cost would be without the building?
I think that's what we're trying to get to right now, is how much that would actually save us. Maybe Blaine can answer that for us if he can give us a rough idea.
Maybe a ballpark. There's a lot of moving parts in our estimate in different areas. Let me see. Actually, the building is a small portion.
Yeah, they had some drywall stuff in there too.
Yeah,
Well, don't forget the control room would stay, and then we would need to provide
Right.
some roofing over the control
Yeah.
room, and not just gypsum. It should be a siding at that point. So
Right.
maybe 125, 30,000 maybe just for the structure. And leaving a little bit in there for the control room. And I'm just, I'm concerned about the electrical. Where we're gonna put the panels, whether we increase the size of the control room and put them in there.
So in short, we're actually subtracting 135, but we got to add back in some costs. Obviously, the hydraulic doors or the roll-up doors, whatever we're going to cover the containers with to keep the water and moisture out, that would have to be added back in. There's a little bit more cost. Excuse me?
you got some electrical stuff there that might go up a little bit, but then you've got some that may reduce some. We'd have to figure out a way how you're gonna provide lighting.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot to take into consideration there. I mean, we gained 135, but yet we got to add some costs back in. So, I mean, it's not a total of 135 savings there. That's kind of the pros and cons we get away.
Yeah, that's just a guess. too.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I mean, we'd have to sharpen our pencils, but tonight we're really trying to pick an avenue to see if it's worth looking that direction.
Thank
I
you.
mean, I would suspect, and this is just kind of off the cuff. I mean, we're seeing buildings right now, like a medical office building, for example, is $350 a square foot with pretty bare minimum finishes. I would suspect this building, including the lighting within the building, might be around 100. So, you know, my rough number is coming up between 175 and 200 potential savings. On removing it, then you got to add in some other items, you know, like electrical, upgrading the electrical to be waterproofed, and a few other things. You know, the door system for the hoppers. So that's my rough estimate. You know, whether a different building type is cheaper now, we don't really know. I think it would be an exercise we would have to check. You know, maybe going back to steel is okay. The other thing we probably didn't factor in is, you know, do we keep the foundation as designed so you could put a building on it later, or do you eliminate that too and just do a slab? You know, that'd probably be a little bit of a savings as well. The bigger part of the foundation is really the retaining wall and the footings and piers that are associated with the steel work and the concrete slab to be able to drive onto to get to the hopper level. I mean, that's probably a good chunk of this money. So if you didn't want the building, there's probably a better way to lay out the retaining walls and not have to do the elevated slab system, which could save some money. But then you're kind of stuck. Your building would probably be bigger later if you wanted to go to it.
Next, I got one more question for you, Chris. So with that all said, how much more would it cost us for the engineering to redesign or figure this all out? Removing the building, redesigning the retainer walls and stuff like that, because that would have to be figured back in too.
Well, removing the building is
It's more work.
nothing for me. That's really just Casey repricing. You know, well, if we tell them we're not doing the building, we can eliminate the lights. I think there may have been a little bit of ventilation in there. We have to add siding to the control room, probably add a roof to the control room, so that can be exterior. And then improvements, you know, what's needed for improvement. So from our end, that's relatively minor. I mean, that's a couple hours here or there. If we want to redesign the retaining walls and eliminate the foundation to make it a completely exterior, non-building at all, then that would take a little more effort. That's, you know, probably 10 to 15,000 or so, just off the cuff.
Okay. Yes, Elle.
Thinking about that, like, so the proposal would be to keep the control room and put a different type of roof over it. And, you know, if we were to keep the foundation the way it is, so a building would go on later, would the roof over the control room have to be removed, or would it be like the new roof would kind of go over that structure?
No, we'd make sure we do a shallow enough pitch that it could just stay.
Okay, so it wouldn't be undoing anything necessarily. Like if we did plan 10 years from now, do the building, it would essentially be just kind of like adding a building on top of it. I'm sure there's something, but there's not a lot of
basically adding a building around it. Yeah. I'm looking at the drawings now just to see what the elevation is.
While you're doing that, I got Blaine's got his hand up.
How important is the paving?
Up on the ramp side, that would be considerably important on the ramp side, because that sheds the water out from underneath the retainer walls, keeps them from getting in there. Plus, you got these big trucks and stuff trying to back up over a slippery, muddy mess.
Okay.
Is that what you was asking?
Yeah, just if you couldn't use a reclaim or something of that nature.
Yeah, we got that in there, but you know, right, especially like this time of year, anybody that's been in construction knows that you got that shelf of frost And then you get 6 inches on the surface of thawed, it's just a slimy mess. Trucks would be just sliding all over the place trying to get up that hill there.
So I know you folks are from multiple towns, and I think, if I understand this correctly,
3
but I didn't
towns,
know, I'm sorry,
3 towns.
3 towns. So, but it's actually in South Thomaston. So I didn't know, lots of time towns can get a better paving price
Hmm.
if they're
In Thomaston.
collaborate. I don't know if that's,
It
Yeah,
could
we
be.
do.
The question is I believe that we might be able to get away with just a binder coat. I think this was a full, the design, Chris might be able to answer this, but it was 2 inches or so of binder coat and then 2 inches of finish coat. We might be able to get away with like a thicker binder coat.
I think it's a 3.5 inch binder now.
Yeah.
With 1.5 inches topping, so.
We went,
Right.
we went 3.5 1.5 just because of the truck traffic. So we went to 5 total. 4 maybe okay. We do 4 on our salt sheds and it's seeing similar truck traffic. So we could get down to 4 and it could just be binder. That's all we use on our salt shed projects is just binder and it's 2 2-inch lifts. The binder is actually a better, it's stronger anyway than the surface coat.
The only difference is it's just a little bit more porous and it's got bigger aggregates in it for the most part. So,
We can look at that.
okay. Anybody else got any suggestions? Anything we can look at?
I guess it'd be all right. If we could get together with Chris, we might have a couple ideas. I'm not so sure I need to share them right now until I find a little more. It might not work at all, but if we can touch base maybe with Chris tomorrow, I would think that by the end of next week, we could probably develop a pretty good shopping list, I guess, I would say.
I have one consideration here. We've got kind of the Cadillac of the scale foundation. I have done them with just slabs before.
Okay.
It's not ideal, and I honestly I'd have to go back and look to see if that's even possible here, if we're draining underneath it or not. If we're draining underneath it, the slab doesn't work. But we have done it with just slabs and putting down insulation to protect for frost protection. Which could save a fair amount of concrete. I mean, this is a fairly, sorry, Bruce, this is a fairly complicated, I say fairly complicated. It's not hard to build, but there's 3 or 4 steps to building this foundation. Whereas if you did it as a slab with a curb, maybe it's 2 steps and probably a lot less concrete.
I believe you come up with that plan with the help of Northeast Scale. They give you some specifications that the scale was required. So maybe we might want to contact them to see how we can scale that concrete back. Of course, they have recommendations and certain specifications that if you want to scale the work right or be under warranty, you got to have.
Yep.
So maybe we ought to check with them too and see if there's a way we can scale that, pardon the pun, but scale that back. Is that something you want me to contact him and have him shoot you a text or an email or a phone call?
Yeah, just let them know something we're interested in, and if they have kind of a typical slab detail. I mean, we've designed some too, and again, I'll have to go back and look at the grades and make sure that we can. It may not be an option because of the grades that we have. We're building this adjacent to the existing slope of the existing ramp that we're cutting back some. So we just got to make sure that we can drain water and it's not sitting on the slab and the scale. So that's probably why we ended up with what we ended up with. I know we have done them on just slabs before. Yeah.
Yes, Sal.
In talking about paving, I know it's something Paul asked about, but I also had a citizen in Thomaston ask about why we weren't planning to pave the residential area. And I know we kind of talked about, we were restricted a little bit about how much we could pave, but I was hoping, not obviously, our agenda is not to add money onto the project, but just while we're all here, I was hoping, Chris, you might be able to kind of explain is there a reason we can't pave around the residential area?
From a permitting constructability reason, no.
Okay, so was there something about the proximity of the wetlands or it would be totally able to pave that area?
No, you're gravel anyway now, and gravel's considered impervious in DEP's eyes, so
Okay,
paving it wouldn't, I don't believe would change that.
okay, so we could do that,
Yep,
if
yep.
we came up,
And-
won the lottery.
And honestly, it's easier for maintenance too. I mean, it's easier
Okay.
to pick up trash, it's easier to plow, it's easier to sand, it's just better.
Okay,
With,
And-
with that said about maintenance too, is, you know, if you want to back the budget, you look, we put quite a bit of reclaim and stuff and materials back into that yard every year. That would be greatly reduced with pavement. So, I mean, you could look at that as well.
mhm.
So
I mean,
you was-
if you folks decide to go the route, I mean, I don't see getting enough money doing little things here and there, doors and a few other things, but if you decided to remove the building and it gets within budget and want to pave, you know, I think that's probably an option. And to Casey's point is, towns can often get, because you do a lot of paving in towns anyway, and if you time it with another project, you can often get the pavement cheaper than contractors can.
Yeah, I think that suggestion about paving was a good one. I know in Thomaston, we do some of our own paving. I don't, there might be the possibility, but I know South Thomaston is about to do a big paving project this year.
We're gonna pave all of Island Road.
And so perhaps, there might be an option. I think that's a good suggestion. And who's doing that, Walter? Is it? It's the
Hager.
company?
Hager, at the
Hager.
moment, we are gonna reach out to another, the thing is that they're doing the renovation project.
Mhm.
So, and Island Road was always the next full pave to be, repaving to be done. And we delayed it because of the Raise the Road project. Now they're gonna have all that, they're gonna be mobilized for that. So we decided the other night, let's do the whole thing.
Cool.
So they're gonna be mobilized, they'll have all their stuff 2 miles away from the transfer station at the end of June.
Okay, anybody else want to make a comment on that?
I said we better get started if they're ready to pave in June.
Yeah, so is it,
Actually, my thought about paving would be to put it in the 12-month budget that we're gonna come up with in the next few weeks to change the fiscal year. But if we free up enough from this project to do it, that's fine too.
Quick question, would you want Blaine Casey to just tell us what that pavement line item was in case you wanted to shop it around yourself?
that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure.
We'll have to get that broke out from our site guy.
Yes, Al.
Just kind of one more question, for Chris and Blaine Casey. So if we went the route to not do the building, what does that do to the schedule, the time frame of the project? Because we're at 8 months with the building. Does it change greatly or?
Yeah, it will definitely change for sure.
Okay,
People, contractors right now, they're booking up our subs. So the quicker we can act, the better.
okay,
And steel pricing has kind of been in limbo the last few weeks. But I foresee that getting a little more, having some more price increases come spring as the work starts. And more particularly as fuel costs. That's getting to be so concrete, trucks, anything that burns fuel to get to and from the site, we're seeing those prices start to go up. In anticipation of $5-6 a gallon for diesel fuel.
One of the things
Yeah,
with steel
just
buildings
blink, and
is,
it's gonna be at $100 in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Chris, you was about to say.
yeah, sorry, one of the things with steel buildings is the lead time. They're so far out right now. That, I mean, we're hearing upwards of 10 months from time of order to receiving.
Well, even any metal product,
Any
sheet
metal, yeah.
metal, you know, we're seeing that too. Not quite that lengthy, but there
Okay.
are long lead items and limited supply of, for color choices of things of that nature.
Okay, so I guess, is it the consensus of the board to have Blaine and Chris go back to work and start working on some prices and give us a rough idea what these ideas may save us?
Yes.
Walt, you disappeared.
I'm back. I'm here.
Is that,
Preserving my bandwidth. Yes, I am in favor of that. But let me just make sure I fully understand. The drainage, the relocation of the berm, all of those things are core, in my opinion. And we're retaining those, yes?
yes, I
Okay.
believe so. It's the consensus that we were looking to take the building away. Put some doors on the hoppers themselves. Change the control room a little bit to make it weather friendly, because right now it's not meant to be out in the open, the elements. So this building will be a weather tight control room. Maybe possibly see if we can get a savings on pavement, but I don't think that was going to fall within your guys' reach, right, Chris and Blaine?
I mean, we can make a few adjustments to the mix as far as for them pricing, but them eliminating and you taking it over. I mean, my guess is it's only going to save 10 or 15%, maybe. And, you know, so it's not a huge amount. It's dollars. I mean, dollars add up once you start looking at things. But so Bruce, I had kind of two different tracks here. One is, you know, what can we do to the building as designed to help reduce costs? One of it's remove the doors, which we roughly know those numbers. Are there some things that we can do with the framing and siding? I mean, we'd spec LVLs. I know LVLs are pretty expensive. Maybe we can go to trusses for the roof instead and it'll be a little cheaper. We're not talking, again, huge dollars, but it all adds up.
Right.
So looking at basically two different avenues. One, is there a way to keep the building basically as is minus a few things and look at some things around it? And then two, eliminate the building if that doesn't get there. And
Yeah.
it's my understanding we have a budget of $1,087,000. That's total though, so we got to subtract 50 grand or so for contingency. Is that what I'm hearing?
Walt, where'd you go?
I'm here.
Yeah, you're in the left-hand corner now. That's basically right, what he just stated.
Yeah, and we have our own contingency.
Well, do we want another one though? Do we want to subtract 50,000 from the 1,087,000?
I'll have to think about that for like 24 or 48 hours. How about that?
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. Hey, Bruce.
Yes.
So can you ask, or can Lauren, whoever, and iPad, whoever, I think I know who everybody else is, but can those people identify themselves
Sure.
and what
We'll
their
start with
affiliation
Lauren.
is?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm a resident of Alice Head. A member of a couple different committees in Alice Head, but I live on North Shore Drive. So,
Thanks.
We don't have a name for the iPad, but if they can hear me, would they speak up and give us a name and affiliation?
I'm Maureen Spencer. I live in South Thomaston. I'm a resident.
Okay,
There's another iPad down.
there it is. Yeah. It just is iPad. Okay, well, I'll try one more time before we got Lynn Chaplin. Would you?
I know Lynn from last night.
Okay. We got Mandy from Thomas.
I know who Mandy is.
One more time for the iPad. Can you hear us? No? Okay. I tried, Walt.
Did you do waiting room, Zell?
Yes, yes, I did. Yeah, so I do not know who iPad is, but I do know that Sandy Moore and Bill Hahn are two other fellow Thomaston Select Board members.
Yep, I know who they are.
Okay, so I guess in conclusion, that's our game plan, is to have Chris and Blaine Construction go back and work out 2 scenarios here and report back to us. You said probably the end of next week.
Yeah, I think we can get something out by the end of next week. Chris, are you available maybe on Friday to touch base with?
Friday's tough. I have some time tomorrow, and then, early next week I'm open too. Fridays are always a bear.
Okay. Maybe tomorrow afternoon after 2. Just
Okay.
one quick question for you, Chris. What is the load rating on the elevated slab? I didn't see what it was. Do you know what
Yeah.
that is?
I believe it's H20.
Okay.
It's vehicle. It's dump truck size vehicle. So I think we went with H20.
All right.
So do we want to set up another meeting for Thursday of next week, Zoom meeting? Is that going to work?
March 3rd, Thursday.
I gotta look. I can't look. My phone's dead.
I got mine right here.
I am open. I wonder if the contractors are going to have the numbers by then, if it's going to matter. Maybe we gauge where they are middle of next week.
Yeah.
I guess we could tentatively schedule one for Thursday.
Why don't we, Todd, you going to be available for that one?
Yeah, I can be. I just need to know what we're doing. Yep.
Well, I think probably one thing we got to know is what it's going to cost for some kind of roll-up doors or some kind of door coverage on those hoppers. We also need to know that as well.
That was my next question before we hung up here is I got a quote that obviously was updated to your original contractor that was awarded to it. I can look into this and try to make a few changes and save some dollars if I can for you guys on this end, but where do you want me to go with this roof assembly and the overhead door type setup? Is that something you want me to include into this, into a quote, or do you want me to separate it from and who am I sending the quote to?
I believe you're going to have to, because if we don't put a building over these hoppers, we're going to have a way to close them off somehow to keep the rainwater and stuff out. So, we save some by not putting a building over it, but we also got to put something back into the budget for keeping the rain out of these hoppers.
Right.
Is that essentially correct with the rest of the board?
Yes.
I agree.
Yes.
So we need to know that number. And we can send that email to our email address for the board. It's OHSTT397@gmail.com.
Well, Bruce, are you carrying that, or do you want the contractors to carry that?
That's the question.
Yeah. Right now, we've worked out a deal with Hager to purchase the not Hager. I'm sorry, with Todd or rather to buy these compactors and stuff. So that was separate from any of that, Pat. So I guess we probably want to stay with us taking care of that. Whatever you give us for a number, we'll add in Todd's number on top of that. Does that sound reasonable to the rest of the board?
Yeah, we just need to make sure that we have whatever power requirements are needed so that we include it in the electrical
Right.
supply
Make
piece of
sure
it.
you guys have that.
Say that again, Todd?
I can make sure you guys have all that. I mean, you pretty much have already what you need for the compactors themselves, 20 horse,
Yep.
450 volt. I just need to get you guys what you would need for your overhead roll-up door type setups.
Right.
So I can get all that information and have that for you guys too as well in the quote. That is not a problem.
Okay.
But so I'm gonna do this quote out to the town, and it's not going through your contractor then. Originally.
It's going through our corporation.
That email address, I think I have it anyways, but what did you say it was? OHSTT?
Yep, at gmail.com, 367 gmail.com.
All right, thank you.
Todd, I know you got to work up a quote, but do you even have a rough idea? Because we want to back that out of the total budget number.
Well, the last quote that I did, which was to the last contractor that we updated due to the wonderful world that we live in and the steel prices we're dealing with, and the specs were 1/4-inch hoppers, 3-inch channel wraps, blah, 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 blah. I want to tell you, it was like $67,000. Hoppers, that included the hoppers, the windscreens, the safety gates, freight for all of everything going up there, which that would be adjusted because the compactors are already there. And then all the installation.
Okay.
So I've got to.
The other option, obviously, you got to work out, right? You got to.
I'm going to break it all apart, and I don't know whether anybody's got. Not that it's a huge savings, but I'm going to look at what the pricing would be to do hoppers out of 7-gauge steel versus 1/4-inch. You guys are not dumping any real commercial vehicles, rear load, front load trucks, roll off trucks. It's all pickups or 1-tons. It may not be worth spending that extra money on 1/4-inch. I think you could go to a 7-gauge hopper versus a 1/4-inch hopper, but that's entirely up to you guys. I can price it both ways.
There are commercial haulers dumping here, right?
Yes, Ronnie's got, I believe it's a tandem axle compactor. I know Robertson
You got a
does.
rear load truck dumping in there?
Yes, he is. He's rear loaded.
So then we got to stay on 1/4-inch hoppers then. Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't, okay, that's all right. Okay. I'll get working on my end of it. I've got to get a hold of door people and everything else, but we'll get it all figured out.
Okay.
Just
And yeah,
for ballpark numbers, Todd, if we go with a hopper with a coiling door, 100,000, you think you'll be in that range?
I think we will be. I honestly think we will be. Now, I guess the question is going to be, was I was looking at coming down in height on the top enclosures to close them in. But I would tell you, you guys are probably going to be close to what we did in Harpswell in heights, because they're doing the same thing, especially if he's got a real load truck, swinging that tailgate out, you know what I mean, into that hopper area. We're going to have to be fairly good size. So I'm going to have to calculate out and look at some measurements on what it is with a rear load truck swinging their tailgate out into that hopper.
Okay. I'm just thinking for budgeting purposes that we're working with Blaine Casey.
Use that number. I mean, I'm not afraid of that number of 100 grand there. And again, hopefully I can keep you under that. I just know that doors are not cheap, like we all know.
Yep. Okay.
The steel portion of it is, we can handle that. That's not a problem, but it's the doors. I gotta go out and source the doors. So that's where I'll go, and I'll get started on that. And then I'll get it to you guys on the board so you guys can review it.
Okay.
I'll copy you, Chris.
Thank you.
Well, you got your hand up. It's been up for a while. Is you want something?
Yeah, well, we have select board members from two of the towns here. I'm wondering if Sandy or Bill have any observations. And actually with Zell present, whether they can actually speak without violating the meeting law.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I'll just observe for tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay.
And that's why I came, was to listen tonight and figure out what was, kind of get some ideas.
All right.
Well, thank you for attending.
You're welcome.
Walt, your hand's still up. Walt. He keeps jumping around. Okay, so I guess that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna schedule a meeting for Thursday night tentatively unless something goes wrong and we have to cancel. And hopefully we have some solid numbers and some plans.
Yeah. Oh, just sorry,
Yeah,
one
Joe.
more quick thing for Chris. So in terms of looking at removing the building or not doing the building initially, the effects to the permits, you said the DEP permit wouldn't really be changed. The fire marshal permit probably would be a small, but could you just kind of talk about like how it could affect the permitting schedule if we made some of those bigger changes?
Fire marshal permit will be null and void because it's no longer a building.
Okay.
DEP, we'll call them and ask that question tomorrow, but I think it'd just be a minor amendment for what's already approved,
Okay.
which I think they can do in-house. They don't have to send it out to their staff and do all that formal review.
Because I think just in terms of our kind of review process, I think, you know, anything with the suggestions that might affect the schedule would be good to know. So that
Right.
would be an
Yep.
example.
I think the same token of permitting, I would have a question to Mandy. Is there any complications with the town of Thomaston in permitting by removing certain items?
No, makes my job easier. But yeah, I'll work with you guys as we finalize this design and remove things and add things. But I reviewed what you guys have submitted so far. I have no real issues with the structural changes, but yeah, once we get it solidified, we can nail that down. It's not a big deal. But yeah, removing the building certainly doesn't make things harder on our end.
Even the planning board approval that's already complete.
Yeah, well, look, if you're changing the site plan dramatically, then we'll have to go back to planning board review. But so far, I'm following and I'm not seeing that triggered yet. So when I have some final visualization of what you guys actually conclude, then we can make that decision.
So we covered it?
I think so.
Okay, no questions? All righty. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
folks.
everyone.
Thank you all. Good night.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.